Hello and welcome. Welcome to Celebrate Aging. I'm Vicki Marthaler, chaplain at Emmanuel Nursing Home, actually chaplain of the Emmanuel campus, and we're getting ready for Valentine's Day. As you can see, we've got our little red heart here, and I've got a couple of examples of wedding pictures because I'm going to be talking about stories and a little bit of history, thinking about Valentine's Day and love, and how do people get together anyway, and where does that all come from? You know, those fun stories that I hope you are writing them down for your family, your love stories, and how you met your spouse, or how your mom and dad got together, and you know, all those fun things that sometimes we just take for granted the next generation knows. And guess what? The next generation won't know unless you tell them. So I was thinking about all the stories I've heard from our residents of how they met so-and-so and how long they've been married and some of their advice. But I want to concentrate kind of today on the stories on how they met and how they were married. It's always fun to hear wedding stories because if you know anything about weddings, they are full of surprises. You just never know. So one of my favorite stories about getting married is a couple decided to get married, and they talked with the minister here in town. It was a Methodist minister. Now we're going to do a little history about things that aren't here anymore. The Methodist Church used to be a big rock brick church where a parking lot is now. In fact, the Berean Baptists were there for many, many years, but it began as a Methodist church. So if you know what I'm talking about, on Lake Avenue and, I don't know, is it Front Street? I can never remember. Frazee Street and Lake Avenue, there used to be the first church probably in town, the Methodist Church. Well, the parsonage was right across Lake Avenue where the parking lot for the library was. And when I moved to town, that's where West Cho's funeral home was at. So now it's a parking lot by the library, but that was the parsonage. And the parsonage and the church were kind of on the edge of town, if you can imagine that there weren't all those houses that go all the way to the lake, that it was kind of at the edge of town. And the house had a little barn behind it because the pastor had a cow or two, some chickens and all that stuff that people had back then. So the couple had made arrangements with the pastor to be married in the parsonage, which is something that was done a number of years ago. That was a very common thing to get married in the parsonage. And when the two got to the parsonage, the pastor wasn't at home. He was milking the cow. He had forgotten that he was going to perform a ceremony. So they found him out in the barn, and he apologized and went in the house and got cleaned up, and his wife, who would be the witness, she was very gracious as well. They had a little coffee first, and then they had the wedding ceremony. But I do laugh about that they had to go out and find the pastor who was milking the cow. Another story I remember is a couple telling how they were married. I can't remember now if it was at Baki or Lund. It was one of those two country churches, and they were married in the wintertime, and of course there was a blizzard. A big snowstorm came, and the whole entire wedding party and all those who came to the church were stranded at the church overnight. But that was okay because the people who were going to play a little music at their reception afterwards were there too, and so they just had they still had the wedding, and they had a lot of wedding cake. Everybody ate wedding cake all night long, and they just stayed at the church. So that makes a wedding pretty memorable, doesn't it? I also asked, how did people get to meet each other? Because sometimes, they're not the neighbor. Sometimes they are the neighbor next door. You went to school with them. And sometimes it's, how did the hand of God be working in all of this, bringing people together? Well, one of my favorite stories is how people got together and met one another was at barn dances. Barn dances were a big thing, and also school programs, that it wasn't just for the parents of the kids, it was for the whole community. And the school did many programs a year, all different kinds of programs. Well, I remember one farmer here in the area said, he was going to the school programs, and he went not really to see the program, but that cute little school teacher. He was really smitten with her. And after about the third school program he went to, he asked her if he could give her a ride home. And this is horse and buggy days now, and she consented, and that's how they began dating. So that's kind of neat to know about the barn dances. How many of you went to barn dances? That's always a fun thing, isn't it? Always someone knew how to play an instrument or two and spend a good night dancing and getting to know one another. Another story I heard just recently was after the service, the gentleman came home and was finding some work on doing farm work, and he came to the little town and went to the restaurant to get a bite to eat. Well, oh my goodness sakes, was there ever a cute waitress there? And the waitress said he sat down at the counter and he ordered some food, and then he said, "So, what's your name?" Well, she wasn't going to be taken by just any sailor kind of guy, so she made up a name. She said her name was Stella McGillicuddy. Obviously not her real name, but she said, you know, he kept coming back. And pretty soon they were dating and married several years. So I have a couple of pictures here. One is this couple has just celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary. And beautiful, you can see it was the traditional bridal gown and the veil. And this picture, again, too, reflects on the ceremonies, more or less just in a dress, not so much the veil and the wedding dress, but in a pretty dress. And you can see the colorized painting. This was their wedding picture. Both married for many, many years. I was visiting too with one of the social workers who likes to hear the stories of our residents, and she said it was interesting that they don't just get married on Saturday nights, that they get married on Tuesday afternoons. It wasn't relegated just to a certain day. So Tuesdays were a good day to get married, just like Saturdays around here are a good day to get married. Another story I heard was that there was a lady who decided she wanted to write to a soldier who was serving in World War II. And so she went to the church she was at, had a list of names of soldiers, and she picked one and started writing to him. And when the war was over, he came and looked her up and said how much he appreciated her letters, that they had been writing for well over a year, and it all led to some dating, and they were married. Isn't that just a love story? Another story is way back when school teachers, women school teachers, weren't allowed to be married. Once you got married, you didn't have a job. And there was a young couple, they were very much in love, but she also really wanted to teach. This was one of her burning passions, and she had gone to school and she got her diploma, and she even had an assignment at a schoolhouse to teach. And so they put their wedding day off 2 years so that she could teach and have that experience. And it served her well for after they were married for a time and their family was growing up. The rules had changed and she was able to return to teaching and had a wonderful career teaching as well as being married and having a family. It's kind of a story about sacrifice and what true love is. It's that living for each other and wanting the best for each other, not only as a couple but personally as well. Just wonderful stories of encouragement. So these are just hopefully an inspiration for you I hope you can tell your story. Hope you tell your story to your kids and to your grandkids, that they might know how Grandma and Grandpa got together and how Mom and Dad got together, and any of those wonderful stories that we need to write them down so they're not lost. It's going to be Valentine's Day, a day when we remember what it's like to be in love and how we fall in love, and let's tell those stories. This is Vicki the Chaplain here at Emmanuel saying, tell away, we're ready to hear. Celebrate your life and celebrate aging.